And now it is my great pleasure to invite the President of the General Assembly to come to the stage and up the stairs. Here is fine. Her Excellency, Annalena Baerbock. I can tell from your applause that really she needs no introduction. The former Foreign Minister of Germany, leader of the German Greens, and now representing 193 countries that make up the General Assembly. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you. Your Royal Highness, Mr. Secretary General, Members of Parliament, Ministers, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, friends of the International Order. I'm honored to join you this afternoon, good afternoon, and allow me to thank the United Nations Association of the United Kingdom for convening this special commemorative gathering here in this very special place where the General Assembly met for the first time 80 years ago. If the signing of the Charter less than a year earlier at San Francisco planted the seed of modern multilateralism, that first meeting of the General Assembly here was the moment it came to fruition. 80 years later, we can see the seeds that our predecessors planted blossom in the textbooks distributed by UNICEF, in the rice delivered through emergency assistance by the World Food Programme, in the millions of vaccinations by the World Health Organization. And yes, also in the work of the General Assembly, the most representative UN body with now 193 member states, giving it unique political legitimacy and moral authority. At the same time, we should not, even at anniversaries, sugarcoat that the United Nations and its principles are not only under pressure, but under heavy attack. As not all of us are singing from the same songbook anymore. So let us use this special moment inside this wonderful building to not simply celebrate, but rather reflect on what can be learned from that cold January day in 1946. When delegates walked through the same streets of London as we did this morning, but to the streets that were scared by the devastation of war committed by my country, back then Nazi Germany. Many of the founding 51 states knew almost nothing but suffering and despair. 2 world wars in a generation, 70 million dead. The horrors of the Holocaust revealed to our collective shame. Nagasaki and Hiroshima obliterated. Over 700 million, nearly a third of humanity back then, still under colonial rule. And yet, when we look at the archival photographs and the movie we just saw this morning of that first meeting of the General Assembly in January 46, something remarkable stands out. The faces, the smiles, the unmistakable presence of hope. Hope that even after catastrophes, nations could break the cycle of destruction and choose cooperation over confrontation. The resolve they demonstrates leaves us with no excuses today. Yet we meet in challenging times. But if our predecessors could emerge from devastation with the resolve to chart a better path forward, how can we credibly argue that we are incapable of doing the same? We need to summon the same resolve found by the delegates in this hall 80 years ago, to form a cross-regional alliance, to defend our international rules-based order and the Charter every single day. Looking at the last 2 weeks, this obviously sounds way easier than it is. Yet, the story of the United Nations was never one of simple victories. nor was it built for easy tasks. It was built from the beginning by and relied on those who were steering against unimaginable heavy headwinds. Remember the archival footage, again, we just saw this morning earlier. These black and white grainy video with crackling sound, but at the end, a crystal clear voice from the then British Prime Minister Clement Attlee. We must and will succeed. In spite of those who called them naive or pure idealist, we now know that they did succeed. So every time I hear the argument these days that it is naive or it won't help to speak up when our charter is being violated, I can't stop thinking of them, but even more, I can't stop thinking how many blows can an international order, can our United Nations endure? For can any country truly sleep in peace if we simply accept that more and more member states, including some permanent members of the Security Council, violate the Charter's core principles? When compromise shifts from mutual accommodation to the slow erosion or the deliberate dismantling of the very foundations of this institution, it is no longer compromise, but compromising. And history teaches us that when so-called realpolitik is confused with appeasement, the result can be catastrophic, as symbolized above by the ruins of London in 1945. So as much as the world needs the United Nations today, the United Nations currently needs you to stand up for it, to defend it, and to engage with it. We need representatives. We need governments. We need those permanent members of the Security Council who still keep both feet firmly planted in the Charter. And we need you, the United Nations Association, civil society, the public, everyone, the true believers in multilateralism, to remind all of us in your parliaments, in your governments, in speeches, or via social media every day that the principles of the United Nations Charter are our common life insurance. We need you to take a stand if our heavily needed reform debates becomes weaponized to make the United Nations not more efficient, what we definitely need, or less bureaucratic, but to weaponize it and to threaten to uproot the second and third branches that hold up the United Nations, which is, alongside peace and security, sustainable development and human rights. They were interlinked pillars from the first second on, rooted in our Charter. So if in future discussions in your parliaments or on TV screens, you might hear that fighting inequalities and climate change, defending human rights, especially women's rights, are outside the core mandate of the United Nations, they might be dismissed as the new Vogue. Just not only show them the Charter, but once more, the archival footage. There's something particularly striking within that at a time when women were largely absent from formal positions of power, alongside the first meeting, there's another video, of the General Assembly, we see a side event led by Eleanor Roosevelt, composed of, well, actually packed with women. From the early days on, it was crystal clear that peace and security for all would never be achieved if half of society were excluded. This was thanks to figures of lasting significance, such as Dr. Hansa Mehta of India, that the Universal Declaration affirmed that all human beings, and not just men, like in the first draft, are born free and equal. So let no one suggest that standing up for all of humanity is not embedded in the very DNA of this institution. I hope we hear the applause also then in later debates, because in the upcoming hearings of the Secretary General in this regard, when we make the choice by 193 member states in selecting the next Secretary General of this institution, this choice will send a powerful signal whether this organization, 80 years later, is truly serving all of humanity, half of which are women and girls. In this regard, dear friends, dear excellencies, at the beginning of 2026, we are not only standing at a crossroads, but history will show whether we find the same courage and determination as our founding fathers and our founding mothers did 80 years ago. We will see it in the face of the next Secretary General. We will feel it in the scale and ambition of our reform led by the Secretary General, the UNGA. And we will judge it against the promises etched in our charter. So as we move forward, let us be decisive, let us be principled, and let us be always better together.